Welcome back, my amazing tri-state area friends. You're listening to a moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. In our Hydration with Heart segment, brought to you by Drink the Legend. Once Upon a Coconut, we're featuring Mr. Renaissance Man, Jeffrey Gurian. He's a doctor, a lecturer, and motivational speaker, but also a comedy writer, a performer and director, an author and producer, and a radio personality. What isn't he? He's not always in that order, though. As a former cosmetic dentist and a former clinical professor at New York University, he's one of the few doctors with a long standing career in comedy, working with some of its biggest names. With his diverse background and expertise, he's authored 8 books, is a keynote speaker on the importance of mindset, and even developed a unique technique to migraine type headaches and head, neck, shoulder, and facial pain called star therapy. He joins me today to chat all about the pursuit of happiness, healing your heart, and balancing all the facets of his career. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Thank you so much, Zen. It takes one to know one. No one does more things than you.
Oh, we are kindred spirits. Let's dive right in.
Okay.
And first, let's chat about your achievements as a best-selling author because I am so proud of you, my friend. You are the author of 8 books, the last 3 called Happiness series, which include Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, Fight the Fear, and Facing Adversity. Could you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write the Happiness series and what are some of the primary messages you look to convey?
Well, over the last few years, we've all been living with so much stress. And, it started with the pandemic. I was in the hospital with COVID double pneumonia. As you can tell, I'm a trendsetter. So I went right out and got it as soon as it was available. March of 2020, I'm in the hospital with COVID double pneumonia. And since that time, the world has been really stressed out. And I felt that there was a need for people to learn to think differently. In my own life, what spurred me to do it, I was a very severe stutterer. And I started stuttering as a child, 6 or 7 years old. I stuttered through my 20s and beyond. And in order to cure myself, I realized that I was holding thoughts that were not valid for me. And many people, I would say probably everybody, are holding thoughts that are not valid for them. They're negative thoughts that affect the way we do things in our lives. And in order to achieve happiness, we need to release those thoughts. Very often, they're pains from childhood, and I call them heart wounds, wounds to your heart chakra. And that's why that first book was called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind. You know how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position? Almost impossible. Almost impossible. But I'm fascinated. In order to cure myself, I had to let go of thoughts that were not working for me. And that started my journey on learning that you can change your thoughts, that just because you have a thought doesn't make it real, it doesn't make it true. And we create all our thoughts, and our thoughts are not necessarily based on experience. They're based on our interpretation of our experience, which is the reason why you can have siblings that are completely different people. And if you ask them about their childhood, you'd think they had different parents. So I've always been fascinated by thought, and I out of my 8 books, 5 are on comedy, one with Chris Rock, but these last 3 are about happiness, mindset, and changing negative thinking to positive thinking, which I think is so important for people these days. And
It is.
it's been resonating with people, and that's how they became bestsellers on Amazon.
Beautiful work. Interestingly, if you look at the statistics, according to the 2024 World Happiness Report, in which the US always ranks in the top 20 happiest countries in the world, and that's shocking to me, this year it has fallen to the 23rd spot, point
Yeah.
proven, driven largely by those under 30 years old. And the US ranked in the top 10 for those over 60, but ranked 62nd for those under 30. We're all over the place. So, Jeffrey, as a happiness expert and a doctor with a focus in energy healing, how do you think happiness can be achieved in today's world, especially for this under 30 generation? And more importantly, can you tell me more about the technique you created called star therapy?
Sure. My advice to those under 30 is get off your phone. We're all looking down. Everybody's walking in the street like this. People are getting neck pains and all kinds of physical ailments from the technology. And as a person in the comedy world, I'll tell you that too many young people are offended too easily. Comedy is a healing force. One of the things that I love about comedy is that it brings the whole world together, people of all different backgrounds sitting in one room and laughing at the same things. And it used to be that way. And today, right now, at this moment, there are people at home waiting to be offended by something. And that changes your view of the world, and it leads to a lack of happiness. So I tell people to trust their intuition. If you're in a comedy club and you hear people telling jokes, when a person is coming from a place of love or a place of hate. You just have to use your intuition. That's all. As far as my STAR therapy is concerned, STAR is an acronym that stands for Spiritual, Transformational, Affirmative Resonance Therapy. The resonance stands for music because I do like a guided meditation, and I was doing this at NYU, by the way, for 12 years. If you walk into a university and tell them that you take away headaches with your hands, they'll probably call the police. But this is what I just lectured on July 18th in Minneapolis. I was the keynote speaker for the Academy of
All
General.
right, hold that thought. Hold that thought. That's my next question. So, see, we're in sync. So now let's talk about your motivational speaking. So just this past July, like you mentioned, I read that you were a keynote speaker on the Minneapolis Convention Center,
Mhm.
speaking exactly about what we're talking about: happiness. This is what you do best, and mindset, and changing negative thinking into positive thinking. And I know that currently, right now, you are in the middle, up until Sunday. It started yesterday on Friday at the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies to treat attendees to a spiritual weekend that you are calling Healing Your Heart with Humor, which is based on the success of your happiness series and work on mindset. So, we've certainly all been through a lot in the past few years, to your point, regarding both physical and mental health. Tell us more about what the current attendees at the Omega Institute can expect from this weekend.
Well, first, it's a great honor to be asked to do a workshop at Omega, where Deepak Chopra, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, and Marianne Williamson all speak, all leaders in consciousness. And the topic that they gave me, I didn't choose it, was called Healing Your Heart Through Humor, because they refer to me as the Doctor of Happiness, which is a nice title that I certainly don't mind having. The attendees are learning to think differently. It started yesterday, September 20th, running through Sunday afternoon. And I'm talking about all the things that I write about. You can't change your past. The only thing you could change is your perspective of your past. So it's looking at the events in your life in a different way than you've looked at them before. And in doing so, to release the heart wounds that we start accumulating as children. Every time someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you, breaks up with you in a relationship, lies to you, it stays lodged inside of us in our heart chakra, and it affects your self-esteem and self-confidence, and it affects every decision you make in your life. Every time you're called upon to make a decision, you think about what to do. And if your thoughts are not valid, your decisions aren't going to work out. So it's the reason why people see the same patterns, the same bad job over and over again, the same bad relationship over and over again. And the only common denominator is you. So I'm talking about how to change your thinking, how to physically, literally change your mind. That's why that first book was called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, which was what I had to do for myself. The other books are called Fight the Fear. We talk about fear. Fear is a bully that tells you you'll never be successful, that you can't achieve your goals. And I hate that. I had to conquer fear to do everything that I do in my life. Fear of speaking to people, fear of being on stage, fear of being a doctor, fear of being successful. And so I find that we're given obstacles to overcome in our lives so that we can help other people. That's the reason that we're given obstacles. Sometimes life feels very difficult and very stressful, but if you can draw on that inner strength, you can use that to help other people. And I think that's our goal.
Wow, you have one interesting and unique perspective on life, and this is why you do what you do, Mr. Happiness. Now, this all sounds so incredible. Everyone has to definitely head to eomega.org if you're not already attending this incredible workshop. Definitely head to eomega.org to register. There's a day left, but the event is incredible. Now, let's shift to the duality of your career. So, aside from your healing and doctoral work, you're also this incredible comedian who has performed in every major comedy club in New York and LA. And you've even worked with and interviewed legendary stars from Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, and Andrew Dice Clay to Bill Burr, Jim Carrey, Nick Kroll, and John Mulaney. I mean, the list goes on and on. What influences your comedic style and how has it evolved over the years?
I see the world in a different way. Comedians do that, and that's why people can relate. We look at things, everyday things that people take for granted, and we see the humor in them because life is really funny if you look at it. In 2015, I had a heart attack. They called it a widowmaker heart attack. Very serious. Came out of nowhere. I had never been sick a day in my life. I guess it was important that I wasn't still married because the widowmaker didn't kill me. But I was back on stage 5 days later, and the owner of the comedy club said to me, "What are you, crazy? You just had a heart attack." I was like, "Yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I didn't want to lose my spot." and, and, and I was joking with the surgeon on the operating table. I wasn't completely asleep, and I felt them unplugging my heart. And I said to him, "I feel you in my heart, not in a romantic way, but I feel you in my heart." And he came to my room later, and he said, "In all my years of surgery, no one has ever joked with me on the operating table before." And he gave me a hug, and he said to me, "You're a miracle." And I said, "You're the miracle. You're the guy that saved me." So it's all about perspective. It's how you look at things. My spiritual teaching has taught me that some days are going to be weird, but I have to understand that that's my path. No one ever promised me that my life is supposed to be perfect. When something doesn't go the way you would like it to, there's a tendency to think, why me? Why is this happening to me? Which I almost did when I had the COVID double pneumonia thing. But the spiritual answer is, why not me? Whoever promised me that my life is supposed to be perfect with nothing going wrong? It's egotistical to think that you're that special, that your life is supposed to be perfect. So it's a matter of how you think and how you process the events that are happening to you in your life. And that depends on how you handle them. And so I've tried to incorporate that into everything I do. When I was recovering from COVID, that's when I wrote my third happiness book called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. And they're true stories that I collected over a period of 20 years. I've always been fascinated by people that overcome tremendous obstacles. My stuttering was minor compared to the stories in this book. And I just wanted to turn a negative into a positive. So by staying home for months, I wrote this third book, and they all became bestsellers on Amazon.
Amazing. Now, you're not only clearly accomplished, but you also use your talents to give back to your community, which I think is incredibly important these days. I'm a huge advocate for social activism, whether that means hosting events for Mental Health Month or being on the
Mm-hmm.
board of LaughMD, whose mission is to bring comedy to people in hospitals and recovery centers and people dealing with grief and addiction and depression. Incredible. Can you share a personal philosophy or even a belief that guides both your comedy and your approach to happiness? And what role does mindfulness play in your daily life?
Those are such great questions. I could go on for an hour about each of them. Mindfulness is very important. So many people live in the past. They're thinking what they should have done, what they could have said. They're torturing themselves and they're losing the now. Our reality, Zen, is right now I'm talking to you. That's my whole life. That's everything that's going on. You and I are talking to each other, broadcasting to millions of people, trying to carry a positive message. I'm not thinking about what I have to do later or what I did this morning. I'm in the moment. When you were kind enough to mention the people that I worked with in comedy, that I wrote for Rodney and Joan Rivers and all, but when Nick Kroll and John Mulaney had their Broadway show, they had me open the show, and I wanted to mention this. They made me a special jacket, just like Curtis Lee was Guardian Angels, but mine says Gurian Angels.
Oh, I love it.
It's an exact replica of Curtis Lee was Guardian Angels. And I used to be his dentist, and he doesn't mind me saying that. He says it on the radio all the time. And I brought him to the show as a surprise. And he wore his Guardian Angels jacket, and I wore my Gurian Angels jacket. They didn't make me wear the beret in deference to my hair, which was very kind of them. But, I try to merge my careers and to spread positive energy. That's always been my goal, no matter what it is, whether I'm writing books or making people laugh or or trying to take away pain from people. I mentioned that briefly, that STAR therapy, spiritual transformational affirmative resonance therapy. I got to do a guided meditation with Stephen Halpern, the father of New Age music. I use special music when I work. I was doing that at NYU for 12 years. They saw me taking away headaches because so many people don't know that from stress, they clench and grind their teeth. And they wake up in the morning with neck pain, and it affects more women than men. So I'm glad I have a moment to mention this. If you wake up in the morning and your neck hurts, the last person in the world you would think to tell would be your dentist. Why would you ever tell your dentist that your neck hurts? And so if they don't ask you, if that's not part of the medical history, it goes undiagnosed. And in this country, they say there's more than 150 million people who think they have migraine headaches that are really musculoskeletal headaches that are coming from overusing the jaw, from clenching and grinding, which is called bruxism. And that was my specialty at NYU, and that's what I lectured on, and so it's very easily treated with a soft night guard for the lower teeth and using just energy to take away, a very non-invasive technique where there's no injections, no medications, just using energy. You asked me about a message, kindness. I want to specify kindness is very important. If there was more kindness in the world, it would be a much happier place.
You are so spot on with everything you said. And with that, we are officially out of time. Thank you so much for coming on. We are so incredibly honored to have you here and to listen to you speak and to even guide us in our own little segment. But you are fantastic, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you because you are a beacon of happiness. You radiate positive energy.
Thank you, my friend. That was the Hydration with Heart segment brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut. That was the very only Renaissance man, Jeffrey Gurian, doctor, author, speaker, and comedian. Definitely check him out online at jeffreygurian.com and on the gram at Jeffrey Gurian. And currently, he's hosting an incredible workshop at the Omega Institute. You have to head to omega.org to register for this incredible spiritual weekend, Healing Your Heart with Humor retreat. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut.
Discover the refreshing taste of 100% pure coconut water that actually tastes great. Naturally sweet with no artificial flavors or added sugar. It's packed with electrolytes to keep you hydrated throughout your day. And with 10% of profits going to charity, every sip makes a difference. Pure taste, pure goodness. Experience nature's Gatorade. Visit Once Upon a Coconut or naturesgatorade.com.